Welcome to the Dice Tower, a series of video reviews about board and card games. Here are your hosts.
Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vasel.
I'm Z Garcia, hello.
I'm Mike DeLisio.
I'm Chris Yee.
Today we're taking a look at a game called Daimyo, which has an authentic samurai helmet on the cover.
Indeed.
Until you look at it closely and realize it's actually a baseball cap mixed with a
handlebars from a bicycle.
Mm-hmm. It's actually a very clever cover because This is Z's favorite genre, post-apocalyptic. I don't know, that's one of your favorite genres.
It's also one of mine as well.
You're right.
Mm-hmm.
So this is an area control style game in which you're going to use cards in a way I've not seen done before. In fact, I don't know why I'm telling you how to play this. Let's let Mike do it.
All right.
Okay, here we see a setup of Daimyo in action. This is being set up for a 4-player game. What you see here on this game board is some different islands, okay? So you've got a number of different islands that all have a corresponding influence track, and you're going to be trying to gain influence on these islands through taking actions, placing governors and other worker-type meeples out on the board that are going to raise and lower influence depending on what you do. There are different regions within each island. You've got what's called the production area, where you're going to be gathering resources. You've got the no man's land here, where you're going to be kind of scavenging for relics. And you've got the rough neighborhood, where your kind of shadowy ninja-type figures are going to be going and doing some kind of nasty, underhanded things. And so if you look on the board on these tracks, for every place where there's a governor, you'll go up 2 on the corresponding influence track. So on this particular island, I guess the blue island, I have only 1 governor there. I'm playing as the purple player. I've got 2 influence. Blue and purple here on this island both have 2 influence, and you can see that that's kind of how it's set up throughout the board here. All right, so what's going to happen is you're going to be taking a number of actions on a turn, and it's going to be used in a dice drafting system. So at the beginning of every round, and there are 5 rounds in the game, you're going to roll the dice, and they suggest that you place them into these kind of columns so that you can see the distribution of the numbers there, okay? Right now, the numbers on the dice don't really matter as much. What matters is going to be the color, because the colors are going to determine which actions you can take on your player boards here, okay? And so here's my player board. I also have 3 cards that are my starting cards for my clan. I would shuffle those up, and 2 of these are going to be my starting hand, so to speak, okay? I'll just place these here for the time being so you can kind of see those and see kind of how they look, and I'll talk about those more in a moment. All right, so once you've rolled the dice, then you take turns, and so let's assume, actually this should be here, let's assume that I'm going first. What I'm going to do is I'm going to draft one of these dice, but I'll show you how these actions go from left to right. And so let's say that I chose one of the blue dice. Maybe I took this blue 5 and I placed it here. So what this action is going to allow me to do is a number of different things that are all depicted right here on my board. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to raise my storage capacity. You start at 3 storage, and these are the number of relic tiles that you can hold. These are relic tiles here on the board in the no man's land areas. So now I've made it so that I can have potentially up to 4 relic tiles at any given time, all right? The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a card from my deck and put it into my hand. So now I've got access to all 3 of my hero cards here, okay? The next thing I'm going to do, if I'm the first person to draft a blue die, which I was in this case, I would take the first player token. If you already were the first player, like I'm showing here, then I would keep it, all right? The other thing you're going to do is activate a villager tile. There are 3 villager tiles that are out here on the board, and they can do a number of different things. Here you can gain either a rice or a gold. Here you can move a governor and collect the resource produced at the new location. So if I wanted to move my governor, I can move it here and collect iron. But let's say, for example, I wanted to do this one, which is to get a relic tile at the location of my scavenger. So let's say I would do that. I'm going to take this green 1 here, okay? Now I've got that relic tile. I've got room for it because I can have up to 4 now. I would immediately replace that relic tile with another one from the bag and place it in the corresponding spot. Once you've taken the action of that tile, you flip it over, and now there's another one that's available, which is raising your supply by 1, okay? So that's what this action does. The green actions are about gaining resources, and so if I were to choose a die and place it here, what I can do is, for this one, I'm going to be gaining resources. So all the resources that my governors produce, and if I had any of my techno farms out, those would produce as well. So let's say, for example, I'm going to move these really quickly. Let's say that I had this set up on the board. So I would be collecting rice, iron, and gold, because that's where my governors and techno farms are at the current place. Okay, so you're gathering resources. If I were to instead have a die here, well, let's just put one here. Then I'm going to be able to move my scavenger around. Okay, so the first thing that you have to do is you move it from an island it's on to a different one. Okay, so if I have this green one, it might make sense for me to move up here and grab this green 2. All right, so I would take that. That's going to immediately get refilled. And then you're going to do it one more time. You can either move back to the island you came from, or you can move to a different island. I don't see any other greens out here that are really going to help me. So let's say, for example, I just wanted to move over here and go for a purple one. All right. Again, I can do this because I can hold up to 4 relic tiles, and right now I only have 3. All right. The other thing you can do is kind of manipulate what tiles are out there, and what relic tiles are out there. You have an area over here that is known as the black market that starts seated with 3 tiles. But at any point, you can, on your turn once, when you're taking this action, you can spend 1 iron or 1 crystal to move 2 tiles from wherever you are. Where did I move? Let's say I moved over here. You can move 2 tiles. Of course, you'd have to pay the resource to do it. Let's say I paid this crystal. You take these 2 tiles and you place them into the black market and you immediately refill it. The other thing that you can do is, one time, you can pay a gold to take one of the tiles from the black market. So let's say I paid a gold, and now I take that purple 3 that I just put over there. Okay, again, I could still do this. I'd still be within my storage capacity. All right, so that's the 2 green actions. The red action is going to be where you are recruiting, okay? You're recruiting either a governor or a shadow. I believe they are called, yes, shadows, okay? And the cost is going to be right here. It's going to tell you what you have to give up to recruit them. And you can do as many as you want to and can afford. So let's say I wanted to put out a governor. I would spend a rice, and I would take one of my governors, and I could put it anywhere where I wanted to gain some influence, and then potentially later on use it to get some resources. So let's say I put it on that gold spot. I immediately am going to move up 2 on the influence of that particular track. Okay? But I have to move this down because it gets more expensive the more you recruit. If I paid another rice, I can move this down. Now the next one's going to be 2. Let's say I wanted to put out one of my 3 shadows. You only have 3 of these in the whole game. All right. So let's say, for example, I wanted to put this shadow out. You're going to pick an island, and you're going to place it on the one that gives you the most money. I put it here because I'm the first one to go there. I get 3 gold. The other thing that happens is I move up 1 on my, 1 on my influence, because they give you 1 influence, and I remove any 1 governor from this spot. Let's say I remove that blue because that's the only one there, and they move back down. Again, you only have 3 shadows in the whole game, so there's a bit of a take that to it, but that's you only have 3 opportunities to do it throughout the whole game. The other thing that to keep in mind is that when you get to the bottom of this recruitment track, which can get very expensive, up to 3, you can pay 2 gold to reset it and go back up to the top. You're basically unlocking it, and you go back up to the top, and you can now be paying less for your recruitment actions. All right. The other thing you can do with a red die is you can build your buildings. Okay. And the cost to build the buildings are depicted in the top. So let's say, for example, that I had taken that action to put this techno farm out there. I'd have to pay, which I don't have, but let's assume I did. I'd have to pay 2 crystals and a iron to do it. I then take the bonus tile that is there and I place it onto my player board. This being a yellow one or gold, it would have to go into one of these 2, which is end of round bonuses. So it's going to basically give me more resources at the end of the round. However, it also is going to make building buildings more expensive, because now instead of 2 crystals and an iron, it's 3 crystals and an iron, and every one of these tiles that you remove from your player board, they're going to give you stuff, going to make things more powerful, but they're going to cost more for you in the long run as you remove buildings, okay? The techno farms basically give you more resources, and the other buildings are going to give you influence, okay? So that's building buildings. This is called a radio tower, okay? And it gives you 2 influence. It's like a governor. It gives you influence in a particular island, all right? So the other thing you can do is you can always place any die of any color here, which is just a tax, basically, that's going to get you 2 rice. So if you're running low on rice, that's a way to get yourself some rice, okay? So you're going to go around, and you're going to be drafting dice. And you can also take bonus actions, okay? Bonus actions are going to be mostly revolving around these hero cards that I mentioned at the beginning of the game. So what you want to be doing when you look at these hero cards are the values in the top there. You play these hero cards based on the values of dice that are on your player board. So for example, I have this card that has a strength of 5. I could play this card because I've got a couple of 5s there, but even if these 5s weren't there and I had the 4 and the 1 there, I would be okay because those add up to 5, all right? You can do this once per turn. You play the card and you do what it says. Basically here, in this case, you would gain 1 gold, and then you could buy a hero card paying 1 gold less. You've got a market of hero cards that are over here. The cost is in the upper right. So in this case, I could buy any of these cards for 1 less gold than it would normally cost. These give you more actions, allow you to do more things. So again, you always start with 3 cards that are specific to your clan, but there are more cards that you're going to be able to purchase throughout the game. Okay? The other thing that you can do is you can have a bonus action based on your clan. If you ever have a value of 13 plus on your player board, you can take that action, okay? And that's going to depend on what your particular clan is. In the case of this clan, you can move your governor and collect 2 of the resource to anywhere that you move. So let's say, for example, I have a pretty good influence in this island. So maybe I move this one. I'm going to move down 2. I still have the kind of the most there, and maybe I move it here and I gain 2 of that, which would be 2 gold, and then I also am going to move up 2 more in this island's influence. Okay, before we get to the end of the round, I do want to talk a little bit more about these relic tiles. Let's say, for example, that I had played much better and I had been able to get myself a nice set of 4 of the same color relic tiles. Okay, 1, 2, 3, and 4. These would be flipped over. I've got myself a complete relic. In this case, it would be in black. So I would take one of my tokens here, and in the island of the corresponding color, I would place a relic tile on the highest most area there, because that's going to give me that much influence in that island, okay? 1, 2, 3. What I would then do is flip these over so that only the 1 is showing on the top, and now this is only taking up 1 space in my supply instead of the 4 that it was when they were being built, okay? So that's another way that you gain influence, is by placing these relic tiles out. And at the end of the turn, or end of the round, I'm sorry, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be evaluating the influence on the islands based on the governors there, any radio towers that you might have built out there as well, which would get you another 2 influence, the relic tiles, and you're going to be gaining points based upon the number of influence that you have in each island. And it's going to tell you how much here. First place, you'd get 2 points. Second place would get 1 point. And as the rounds go down, you're going to gain more and more influence based upon the later rounds, and you're going to keep track of those points here. At the end of the game, you're going to be adding up all of the points that you've gained throughout all of the influence. You are going to determine the relics that you've gotten, the buildings that you've built, the heroes that you have drafted throughout the game, and you also are going to get 2 points if you've got the mighty helmet. You also get points for some leftover resources. But that, generally speaking, is how a game of Daimyo is going to play out.
Okay, so a couple things about Daimyo. You can get extra stuff, and I did. I got the extra box here of miniatures. So all the wooden pieces are replaced by miniatures. All the buildings, the daimyos themselves, the whatever they're called, the assassins, the
governors, and the shadows.
It's gonna fall. But there's also an upgrade box that I have where it changes the boards, which are just paper boards, to
dual layer boards.
Yes, dual layer boards.
And those were shown in the overview.
Yes, and in fact, they're just in the game. Dual layer, always there.
You mean for you?
For me, right.
Yes.
This is where I'm debating on. These are very good miniatures.
They are nice.
They are.
But I almost feel like they might detract from the game.
I agree, and I think part of the reason, something that we may mention as well, is that the board is very busy. It's a very, very visually overwhelming board.
Wow, stop making these boards that aren't faded.
It's not a bad look. I mean, I think the art on it is very nice, but it's just too much, in my opinion. And when you add this to it, I think that would be like even more visual overload. So I think the wooden pieces actually work better with that board than something like that.
I don't know if it would or not. I'm ambivalent on that one. I don't care. They're both fine.
Yeah, you thought the board was too busy.
Oh, well, yes, I'm getting to that. But then I don't care about the wooden bits or this. This has a bright disc that clearly lets you know this is purple.
Sure.
Pinkish purple. The board is insanely busy. It doesn't matter. This could be this part. I don't care because the board is so hard to read, so incredibly hard to decipher that it slashes playability in half for this game, in my opinion.
I don't think it's that bad.
I think that's overstated.
2/3.
I think it was hard to see at the beginning that, like, oh, this board is actually very simple. There's 5 regions, and you want majority on the little track. That's kind of it. You know, there's farms and there's, I don't know, spots to put people.
Yes.
There's a few other minor things that I wish they did. There's those 3 tiles that you put in the middle of flip over, and they're literally like, just put them in the middle of the board. Really, you have a space for everything else, but not those?
Oh, and the same thing with the dice, Tom. You really, they tell you just put the dice in the middle of the board, too.
All right, so just have a spot to put the dice.
I agree. And because there's plenty of dead space on the board, actually. There really is. So you could do that.
The board is my only issue.
Yes, as far as component-wise.
The other components are fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. And even talking about the usability, the wooden components have little usability, you know, kind of things to help the player, where when you put those techno farms out, they've got a little cutout of a resource to remind you, hey, these produce for you. And the radio towers, they have like a 2 cutout, so you know, hey, this gives me 2 influence. I like that. You don't have that with the plastic pieces.
I was going to say the only other criticism I would have of the pieces, in addition to what Mike said, was the amount of times that we rolled the dice in the middle of the board where it tells us to, and then you bump influence trackers. You know, Mike was even very careful one time and just, I'm calling you out specifically,
It happened,
just dropped them carefully, and they still scattered pieces. Ah, was it 7?
I feel like he even called, watch how to do this.
I did it
without
as a joke.
knocking over pieces.
I did it as a joke because they're like, you're going to knock pieces over. I'm like, no, watch. Here's what you do. And I just stopped them down and just, they flew all over the place.
It was really funny.
Now, the only thing to that is that it's all open information. So you never have to wonder. Like, you can just look and say, okay, I've got a governor here. That gives me 2 influence. I've got a techno farm. This gives me, or techno farm wouldn't, but you know what the influence gives you.
Yes.
So.
It's not good design. But, I mean, I'm talking about, you know,
layout.
Spatially.
I agree, yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's a big, big board with a ton of wasted space, things that they should have given you room for.
Right.
That isn't there. All these tracks going towards the big empty space in the center. But that's where you naturally want to roll dice. It's not good use of the space they have.
There's some
okay, that's all
usability
I'm saying. And then you add artwork on top of that is, you know, very bright and really gets in the way of what's going on, and the usability takes a hit.
The game itself. What did you all think about the dice drafting system? You draft a die, you use it. The color matters based on where you put it, but the number matters for playing up the cards.
It's super unique. I've not seen that before, where there's a 2 and a 3 and a 5 of red, and I kind of don't care. I just need a red action. I thought that was fun, right? And then the only time I care is adding up the numbers to try and make cards trigger. I've not seen that in any other game. I don't know if you fellas have.
Nothing quite like that, and I do think it's a innovative dice drafting mechanic, and I also like the fact that, you know, it takes away this whole idea of big numbers are always better. A lot of games, you always want the higher numbers. And in this case, sometimes you don't, based on the cards you have. The reason why you might want the higher numbers is because you can trigger your clan ability if you have 13 or more. And that can be nice. But those clan abilities are usually not anything, super game breaking or anything. It might give you a couple of resources. It might let you get a little tile or something like that. But no, I think it's a clever mechanic and pretty simple to understand too.
Yeah, I agree. I think the dice mechanism is the central sort of spark here, where you look at and go, oh, neat. There's always, hopefully, at least one occurrence in any game overview, a game explanation, where something is dropped in you and you go, oh, that sounds cool. This is that thing.
Yeah.
In this one.
I really like it. We made fun of the game. Everyone, when I teach it, every time I've taught it, people make fun. I'll be like, all right, you have 3 cards. Draw 2. You have a deck of 1.
Right.
And everyone's like, oh, ha, 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 ha. And that's really, you really do cycle through your cards a lot.
Yes.
It's not really a deck builder per se, because I think the most I got, maybe 8 cards.
Right.
And that's when I was going crazy on getting cards. But I think this system is solid.
Sure.
Now, the game has some, quote-unquote, take that. You are using your, I keep forgetting the name of them, shadow, they want to call them ninjas, to take out somebody else. And it's somewhat devastating, but you can only do it 3 times a game. I didn't know what you all would think about that.
I'll speak first as the person who appreciates take that the least. I would take the air quotes out of it a little bit because, I definitely feel attacked in the game, but it's not.
I hope so, because I meant to do so.
Yes. Nearly every one of your shadows.
That's true.
I'll find my way over to Chris, and then
Well, you were winning.
Right, and so it's fair, I think, in a game like this. I think it's fair. It's not too devastating, but it definitely does feel like a player can get piled on. Someone can get piled on even if they're not necessarily the leader, if there's that appearance of leading. So there is some tactics you have to employ to not look like you're doing too well. So you have to keep that in mind in the order that you draft the dice when you take the actions. That means some of the dice might not be there. So whether that's, I don't think that's a flaw with the game. I think that's something to be aware of if you would rather not have that in your type of play.
I suppose I wish there was some type of a incentive to not play your shadows, because you have 3 shadows which you get out there as part of a recruitment action, right? So it's not like you're wasting a turn. When you take a recruitment action, you can, as many as you can afford, you can put out your governors and you can put out one of your shadows. If you didn't want to play those, it would be nice if you got some points for having some of them left over. You know what I'm saying? Because there's no reason not to ever play your 3. You get coins. Anytime you place them, you get coins.
Well, that does go down.
It does go down, and so that incentivizes you more to play them earlier, right?
But if you play them earlier, there's no one to kill.
There's nowhere to kill, yeah. And it's a 3-point swing in influence, because you get 1 point of influence for placing it, and you're removing 2 from somebody else. So there's never an incentive not to do them, other than maybe you can't afford to play them. So I think if you didn't want to play that way, it would be nice if there was a way to incentivize that, and there's not at this point.
There is a way to take them out of the deck, though. So if some of the cards are take that, you can just they have them all marked.
That's
you can
true.
take those out.
That is true.
I would probably play without them, actually, because I think that the game balances with the 3 shadows. I don't know why. Anyway, but the cards could really swing. I could get a card that's really mean, and you're like, well, forget that. He's playing out the rest of the game.
Right.
Yeah, I guess to me what you guys are all sort of talking about, it speaks to a sort of a bit of a deeper issue I have with the game, which is a kind of a mismatch between the look and the feel and the identity of the game and what it attempts to do, but how it actually behaves. There's just a lot of clashing for me, It's post-apocalyptic, and it has this faux Asian theme, I think. But then the iconography on the board is a bunch of dudes with hats like this.
Well, I think that's the point of the game. It's a bunch of guys with hats like that who are pretending to be samurai.
They're scavenging stuff.
Yeah.
And then there is all this sort of really cut and dry area control stuff, and then super cut the legs out from under you moves. I find the whole package to have a lot of clashing with itself. And that's best represented, honestly. I was just looking at the board, and I looked at it with the dice there and cards and this, and I was like, there are at least 4 different ways in which this game represents numbers. By that I mean fonts. Mm-hmm. There's digital readout.
On the dice.
On the dice and on the track down the side.
Right.
There is the sort of, Asian swish kind of thing. There's Roman numerals. Mm-hmm. It's just all over the place. Mm-hmm. This game has a real identity crisis for me. Okay?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I feel about the whole take that thing. It's paprika also.
It's a very interactive Euro, right? Would you say that? I mean, it's a Euro game.
It definitely does.
A mean one, sure.
Yeah,
I guess. It's an area control game.
Area control games are by very nature mean because we're fighting over who is the most.
But this definitely leans into that as well. I mean, it's definitely a game where you are what you're doing is impacting the other players. It's not just indirect. Like there's indirect issues too, like where I see that Z has 1, 2, and 4 of purple relic tiles, and there's a 3 on the board. I could go take that 3 from him even if I don't really need it. Right.
Well, let me ask you about that because that's to me the weakest part of the game is the relic tiles.
Okay.
I thought it was a cool idea. Mm-hmm. It feels like randomness of never being able to get the one you want, even with you spent. I mean, resources aren't easy to get.
Sure.
You can wipe them and do stuff, but you could end up not getting the one you need, and an incomplete set is garbage.
Yes, and that did happen to me more than once, and it is frustrating. It is.
I thought it was funny.
Yeah, sure.
But I can feel your frustration in a sense.
Yeah, I agree in the sense that I feel like it's very, very random. I do think that one of the clever mechanisms is that black market, the manipulating the black market. You can do a couple of clever things, but I agree with you.
They feel small.
Yeah,
though,
yeah,
right?
it does.
Doesn't that feel like very much an afterthought? That whole set collection.
Sure.
The couple of manipulation, rules that they're like, well, we got to make this easier to get.
Yeah.
So this is an extra rule that lets you seed more stuff off the board.
I think it speaks to that identity crisis, right? Like, we need a MacGuffin to move around and do other stuff. Whereas the area control is really compelling, I think. And the building buildings, build up your engine, unlock build a building, unlock a new upgrade type thing. I like that.
I
That
really
was
like
really
those upgrade
slick.
tile things.
Yeah, that feels like it was there from the beginning, doesn't it? The other thing
Yes.
never quite meshed.
Yeah.
And again, I could be completely wrong. Maybe that was the first thing they came up with. I'm just talking to what it is now, complete. Yes, the area control feels natural, and many of the other things do feel like additions, sort of like an add-on to the house.
Yeah, sure.
All right, so what are your thoughts then on the game as well? I'm sensing 10 out of 10.
I'm kind of wavering on it. Look, we played this. Last time I played this was a week ago at this point. 5 days ago, I don't know. I barely remembered it. I really, I think this game is going to be completely forgotten in a year. I really do. I think it is. None of the things it does are memorable enough for this to be any more, to have any more longevity than literally any other area control game. 5.5? I don't know.
All right.
I just don't care about it. I really don't. I have no strong feelings about it one way or the other.
What about you?
Well, it's interesting in the sense that I can't really argue that it's not a game that really does anything that's really novel. There's some little things that are cute. Like I like like you said, the dice drafting, and I like the bonus tiles. But this is a crowded genre. It really is. There's a lot of games that do this, and I think do it a bit better. So this is one where I like it a bit more than Z. I think it's a little bit more clever. My favorite part is the card play. That's my favorite part of the game, but it's not a big enough part of it. So for me, it's coming in at a 6.5.
Interesting. So I might have liked it a little bit more than you, despite the fact I had a lot of the reservations with the meanness and the attacking, and I can't really disagree with anything you said. I would give it a 7 because it did surprise me that I had fun. I'd come back to this game. The engine building and those parts are fun. That I can kind of overlook the fact that the set collection's a bit tacked on, and I also appreciate a game that says, here's the mean cards, they're marked, pull them out. I'm going to pull them out.
Oh, sure. No, I think that is good. That's a good idea.
Actually, it's funny, I agree, right? I also would give it a 7, but I also understand what Z says. You're right, it's not memorable, although I actually really like the theme. I'm not usually big post-apocalyptic, but I'm big on this, we're cool, faux, look at us, we're cool, and they're really not cool. And I think there's a lot of really clever mechanisms in the game. I like how it costs more food to put out people, but then you can pay to reset that. That's a neat mechanism.
It's cute.
I like the whole, I need to draft a blue die to go first, but I don't really want to do that action right now. That's a nice mechanism. And the different things, like I want to build a lot of buildings, but I can only do it once per turn. So I need to think about, I thought there was good angst in the dice drafting. And then the card thing, while not as cool as it initially sounded, like I was like, oh wow, this number thing, it's a neat idea, but didn't come into play as much as I thought it would, but it's still neat. So there's a lot of like, wow, cool, 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 cool. And then like Z says, I'm having a little bit of trouble remembering it, but I still enjoy it. I would still play this, and it didn't go over long. Best with 3, though. I think 4 is slightly longer than I would want.
Right.
But there you go. That's Daimyo, Rebirth of the Empire. What empire is being reborn?
Fine question, Thomas.
All right. Until next time, I'm Tom Vasel.
I'm Z Garcia.
I'm Mike DeLisio.
I'm Chris Yee.
Have fun rebirthing an empire.